You're listening to the Cyberwire Network, powered by N2K.
Around every entry point and every clever attacker, Vectra sees the attacks others can't. How? Vectra has AI on it. Vectra's AI attack signal intelligence tells security teams where to focus, what matters. It wades through thousands of individual threat events so you don't have to. Attackers infiltrating your network? Vectra has AI on it. Attackers compromising your identities? Vectra has AI on it. Vectra AI, the integrated signal powering your XDR. Visit vectra.ai/showme to learn more. That's vectra.ai/showme to learn more. A zero-day affects Samsung mobile processors. A critical vulnerability is discovered in the OneDev DevOps platform. German authorities warn against vulnerable industrial routers. The Bumblebee loader buzzes around corporate networks. Ghostpulse hides payloads in PNG files. A Michigan chain of dental centers agrees to a multi-million-dollar data breach settlement. A White House proposal tamps down international data sharing. Fortinet is reportedly patching an as-yet undisclosed severe vulnerability. In our Threat Vector segment, host David Moulton speaks with Nathaniel Quist about cloud extortion operations, the rise of ransomware attacks, and the challenges businesses face in securing public cloud environments. And Russian deepfakes spread election misinformation. It's Tuesday, October 22nd, 2024. I'm Dave Bittner, and this is your Cyberwire Intel Briefing. Thanks for joining us here today. It is great, as always, to have you with us. Google's threat analysis group has warned of a zero-day vulnerability in Samsung's mobile processors that has been actively exploited with a CVSS score of 8.1. This use-after-free bug can be abused to escalate privileges on vulnerable Android devices, specifically impacting Samsung's Exynos processors. The flaw resides in the M2M scaler driver, which handles media hardware acceleration. Attackers can exploit the bug by manipulating I/O virtual memory mapping, leading to arbitrary code execution within the privileged camera server process. This allows them to bypass Android's kernel isolation protections. Google researchers have noted that this exploit chain likely targets Samsung devices and could be linked to spyware vendors, though specific details about attacks have not been provided. The vulnerability was patched by Samsung in their October 2024 security update. However, its active exploitation highlights the ongoing risks from zero-day threats. A critical vulnerability has been discovered in the OneDev DevOps platform, affecting versions prior to 11.0.9. This flaw allows unauthenticated users to read arbitrary files on the OneDev server, posing a serious risk to organizations using the platform for software development and deployment. The vulnerability could expose sensitive information, such as configuration files and source code, which attackers could exploit for further attacks or espionage. Due to the lack of credentials required to exploit the flaw, it significantly heightens the risk of unauthorized access and potential breaches. OneDev has released an update to address this issue, and users are strongly urged to update immediately. Germany's CERT-VDE has warned organizations about critical vulnerabilities in industrial routers, including the MBNet Mini router from MB Connect Line, used for VPN access to industrial environments. Discovered by Moritz Abrell of CIS, Two critical vulnerabilities allow unauthenticated remote attackers to execute OS commands and take control of devices using hard-coded credentials. Three other high-severity flaws enable privilege escalation and information disclosure, with some requiring local access. These vulnerabilities also affect Helmholtz's Rex 100 industrial router, likely due to shared hardware and software between the two devices. If exposed to the Internet, attackers could potentially compromise industrial control systems by exploiting these flaws. Both MB ConnectLine and Helmholtz have released patches, though SIS has not verified their effectiveness. The advanced malware loader Bumblebee has resurfaced, potentially posing a major threat to corporate networks. Netscope Threat Labs recently identified a new infection chain linked to Bumblebee, marking its return after a 4-month absence following Europol's Operation Endgame crackdown on botnets in May of this year. First discovered by Google in 2022, Bumblebee is used by cybercriminals to infiltrate networks, deploying dangerous payloads like Cobalt Strike beacons and ransomware. The latest campaign targets U.S. organizations via phishing emails containing LNK files that trigger the malware's download. Unlike past attacks, this version uses MSI files disguised as legitimate software installers, running entirely in memory to evade detection. Linked to high-profile ransomware groups like Quantum and Conti, Bumblebee's sophisticated stealth techniques and ties to ransomware operations make it a severe threat to corporate cybersecurity. Experts warn that organizations should not underestimate its potential damage. CISA has added a critical vulnerability in ScienceLogic SL1 to its known exploited vulnerabilities catalog due to active exploitation. This vulnerability, with a CVSS score of 9.3, involves a third-party component and could lead to remote code execution. ScienceLogic has issued patches. Rackspace experienced unauthorized access to internal servers due to this flaw. CISA urges immediate action, with a deadline for federal agencies set for November 11th. The Ghostpulse malware strain has evolved to retrieve its payload by embedding malicious data within PNG image pixels, marking a significant change since its 2023 launch. Security experts, including Salim Bitam of Elastic Security Labs, note that Ghostpulse is often used as a loader for more dangerous malware like Luma. This new technique makes detection even more challenging, as the malware uses Windows APIs to extract pixel data and uncover the encrypted configuration. Ghostpulse's evasion tactics, combined with social engineering techniques like tricking victims into running PowerShell scripts, highlight the increasing sophistication of this malware. Great Expressions Dental Centers, a Michigan-based practice with 250 locations across 9 states, has agreed to a $2.7 million settlement after a 2023 data breach affected over 1.9 million patients and employees. The breach exposed sensitive information, including Social Security numbers, medical records, and financial details. Under the settlement, affected individuals will receive compensation based on the severity of their data exposure, with those whose Social Security numbers were compromised eligible for up to $5,000 in reimbursements. Great Expressions will also implement improved data security measures, including multi-factor authentication and enhanced encryption. The breach, occurring between February 17th and 22nd of 2023, compromised unencrypted data. Attorneys are set to receive $900,000 in fees. Despite agreeing to the settlement, Great Expressions denies any wrongdoing. The Biden administration is cracking down on data transfers to countries like China and Russia with a new set of proposed rules. These are all about keeping sensitive personal and federal data out of the hands of foreign adversaries. Under the plan, U.S. companies would be blocked from sending specific types of data, like genomic, biometric, and geolocation info, when certain limits are hit. For example, no more than 100 Americans' genomic data or 1,000 people's biometric data can be shared with companies in those nations. The rules also aim to stop data brokers from selling this information to foreign governments, which could use it for cyber attacks or surveillance. Businesses will have to comply with new standards from CISA, and violations could mean serious penalties. There are a few exceptions like personal communications and clinical trial data, but overall, this is about tightening security and keeping American data safe. Fortinet has released critical security updates for FortiManager to address a severe vulnerability reportedly being exploited by Chinese threat actors. The company privately notified select customers and recommended mitigations, including restricting device registrations to known serial numbers and isolating access to trusted networks. While specific details about the vulnerability haven't been disclosed, the issue seems related to FortiGate to FortiManager communication. If you're a user of the affected products, this may be a good opportunity to reach out to your contacts at Fortinet to check in on the latest. Coming up after the break, in our Threat Vector segment, David Moulton speaks with Nathaniel Quist about recent cloud extortion operations. Stay with us. Calling all InfoSec professionals, are you dreading the annual scramble to create engaging content for Cybersecurity Awareness Month this October? KnowBe4 has your back with their brand new 2024 Resource Kit, featuring their own award-winning streaming quality show, The Inside Man. This comprehensive kit is a goldmine of free resources designed to both captivate and educate your users. Your users will enjoy free access to the heart-pounding first season of The Inside Man, and for the first time, engage in the Inside Man New Recruits game, where your users become cyber analysts hunting down a malicious insider threat. But there's more. You get access to a resource user guide packed with ideas and messaging, a weekly planner to help you roll out your campaign effortlessly, plus enough supporting training modules and assets to fill a whole month. Cover critical topics including AI and deepfakes, mobile device security, and incident response, all with the free kit. With KnowBe4's kit, say goodbye to outdated, unengaging content. It's all there, ready to go. Learn more at knowbe4.com/cybersecurity-kit. When it comes to ensuring your company has top-notch security practices, things can get complicated fast. Vanta automates compliance for SOC 2, ISO 27001, HIPAA, and more, saving you time and money. With Vanta, you can streamline security reviews by automating questionnaires and demonstrating your security posture with a customer-facing trust center. Over 7,000 global companies like Atlassian, Flow Health, and Quora use Vanta to manage risk and prove security in real time. Our listeners can claim a special offer of $1,000 off Vanta at vanta.com/cyber. That's VANTA.com/cyber for $1,000 off Vanta. On today's segment from the Threat Vector podcast, host David Moulton speaks with Nathaniel Quist, manager of Cloud Threat Intelligence at Cortex and Unit 42. They discuss recent cloud extortion operations, the rise of ransomware attacks, and the challenges businesses face in securing public cloud environments.
And is honeyified an official term?
It should be, right?
Right? Like, you got me laughing here. I'd muted the mic, but I've never heard honeyified. I like that. I feel like that's That's something that we should have in more of our headlines. Things that have been honeyfied.
I think more things. Honeyfied. It's like a tasty treat. You just want to grab it, but
Yeah, sounds like breakfast. Welcome to Threat Vector, the Palo Alto Network's podcast, where we discuss pressing cybersecurity threats and resilience and uncover insights into the latest industry trends. I'm your host, David Moulton, Director of Thought Leadership. Today, I'm speaking with Nathaniel Quist, Q to those who know him. He's a manager of cloud threat intelligence at Palo Alto Networks and Cortex Unit 42. Q leads the team focused on uncovering and analyzing threats targeting cloud infrastructures, including AWS, GCP, and Azure. With his expertise in public cloud security, threat intelligence, and malware analysis, he has been at the forefront of understanding the growing and evolving cloud threat landscape. Q, welcome to Threat Vector. I'm really excited to have you here.
Awesome. Thank you, David. Appreciate being here.
Today, we're going to get in and talk about the cloud threat landscape and some of your thoughts on the latest developments, including cloud extortion operations, cloud-native threats, and how businesses can strengthen their defenses. We've got a lot to talk about. So, Q, let's look at that research that you've recently published on Unit 42. It was highlighting some of the large-scale cloud extortion operations, and we'll have a link to this article in the show notes. But could you walk us through some of the key findings and how those attackers were exploiting cloud environments?
Yeah, most certainly. So it started out with exposed credentials, and these exposed credentials were actually environment variables. Just a quick idea, a quick synopsis of what an environment variable file is. Let's say you have a web front-end system and you want to be able to connect to a database in the back end, and you need to have authentication to make that happen. You don't want to have to manually do it because it's automated. So you have something called an environment variable. And that will have your username, it'll have passwords, perhaps session tokens, things of that nature. And due to the sensitive nature of these, you obviously don't want those to be exposed publicly. However, these were. And so the threat actor found that there were a number of environment variables that were exposed. They were specifically looking for something called Mailgun, which is an email service, which is a very common target for threat actors. Email services within cloud because they want to send phishing emails. That's really important. So they were looking for Mailgun. As they were looking through Mailgun, they started collecting a lot of credentials. They targeted about 110,000 different domains and IP addresses looking for environment variables. They were able to collect 90,000 plus environment variable files. And inside of those environment variable files, they found roughly 1,200 AWS access keys and IDs that they were able to get into the cloud systems from there. So it was kind of worm-like in some aspects. When they were able to find one environment variable, they were able to get into that S3 bucket behind it, and then that RDS system they pulled down and deleted all of those particular files from S3 and RDS, left a little ransom note, and said, we have your systems for ransom. Please pay this amount, and then and you can have your data back. So that's kind of where it started. It was a real attack that we went through. We were working with the incident response team for Unit 42, and they pulled us in for threat intel enrichment to see where they're coming from, how that worked.
So how does an attack like this evolve over time? And are there specific patterns that you're starting to notice?
Well, what we're finding with threat actors, specifically looking at cloud, they're really starting with that low-hanging fruit. A couple of years back, it was all cryptojacking and crypto mining operations. We're starting to see an evolution into ransomware because a lot of the just exposed systems are not really there anymore to make cryptojacking super lucrative. So they're looking for exposed identity access management credentials, those keys and IDs, session tokens, so they can get into those cloud environments. Once you're inside of that cloud environment, we're starting to see more evolution in lateral movement. We're starting to see more privilege escalation happen in those environments. And then that makes ransomware attacks, theft of intellectual property, a little bit more common. So the evolution is really, as threat researchers and intelligence analysts, we're seeing that these types of attacks are occurring. We create blocks and mitigations for them. Threat actors will have to raise their game, which so they can get over some of those protections to find more credentials or more ways to laterally move or increase their permissions inside of that cloud environment. And then, we defend against that, and they go over that, and they go over that. So we're getting into that cat and mouse game. So really
Right.
what we're seeing last few years, very exposed endpoints, a lot of exposed Docker containers, a lot of exposed Kubernetes containers, a lot of exposed, virtual machines and cloud environments that they would just take advantage for cryptojacking purposes. Now we're starting to see they're starting to leave the endpoints, go into the cloud system, and start their own endpoints to do their operations.
So looking ahead, do you see the cloud threat landscape evolving over the next few years? And what should businesses prioritize to future-proof their cloud security strategies?
Yeah, it's a big question. My opinion is that we should focus more time on automation, and we should really focus that time on automation in the ability to create known state of cloud systems. So what are the applications and services that we're using, and are they created effectively to begin with? So starting with infrastructure as code templates, making sure that everything is started from a very base, secure state. From an identity and access management policy, really get organizations to understand that we need to use roles as opposed to individual IDs or individual users in cloud environments. That will make user management a whole lot easier to maintain and operate, to operationalize, and then for also security teams to know who happened when and where. So making sure that you're doubling down on automation, simplifying the process of preserving data as it's happening, and then make sure that you have some sort of CNAP operation, some sort of runtime operation to look at your critical assets to ensure that you're seeing everything that they're using.
Thanks for listening to this segment of the Threat Vector Podcast. If you want to hear the whole conversation, you can find the show in your podcast player. Just search for Threat Vector by Palo Alto Networks. Each week, I interview leaders from across our industry and from Palo Alto Networks to get their insights on cybersecurity, the threat landscape, and the constant changes we face. See you there.
Be sure to check out the entire Threat Vector podcast wherever you get your favorite podcasts. The IT world used to be simpler. You only had to secure and manage environments that you controlled. Then came new technologies and new ways to work. Now, employees, apps, and networks are everywhere. This means poor visibility, security gaps, and added risk. That's why Cloudflare created the first-ever connectivity cloud. Visit cloudflare.com to protect your business everywhere you do business. And finally, in the run-up to the 2024 U.S. presidential election, combating misinformation remains a significant challenge, as seen in the latest case involving false claims about Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. A Russian-aligned network, Storm 1516, is believed to be behind the spread of these fabricated sexual abuse allegations. The campaign gained traction after the release of a deepfake video, a tactic common in Russian disinformation efforts. Darren Linville of Clemson University's Media Forensics Hub points out that Storm 1516 typically plants fake stories and AI-altered videos, which are then amplified by other online networks. Once viral, these false claims are shared by unsuspecting users, sometimes even picked up by mainstream outlets. This strategy aims to manipulate public perception and undermine political figures like Walz. Experts warn that this disinformation campaign, linked to pro-Kremlin and QAnon influencers, is part of a broader effort to sway opinions ahead of the November election. For further insights into disinformation and misinformation in the U.S. election, be sure to check out our 3-part mini-series, Dismiss. Rick Howard sits down with election experts to navigate the 2024 presidential elections information storm, offering a toolkit to help you distinguish between deceptive narratives and legitimate content in today's rapidly shifting election security landscape. It's worth your time. Check it out. And that's the Cyberwire. For links to all of today's stories, check out our daily briefing at thecyberwire.com. We'd love to know what you think of this podcast. Your feedback ensures we deliver the insights that keep you a step ahead in the rapidly changing world of cybersecurity. If you like our show, please share a rating and review in your favorite podcast app. Please also fill out the survey in the show notes or send an email to cyberwire@n2k.com. We're privileged that N2K Cyberwire is part of the daily routine of the most influential leaders and operators in the public and private sector, from the Fortune 500 to many of the world's preeminent intelligence and law enforcement agencies. N2K makes it easy for companies to optimize your biggest investment, your people. We make you smarter about your teams while making your teams smarter. Learn how at n2k.com. This episode was produced by Liz Stokes. Our mixer is Trey Hester, with original music and sound design by Elliot Peltzman. Our executive producer is Jennifer Iben. Our executive editor is Brandon Karpf. Simone Petrella is our president. Peter Kilpie is our publisher. And I'm Dave Bittner. Thanks for listening. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Quick question. Do your end users always, and I mean always without exception, work on company-owned devices and IT-approved apps? I didn't think so. So my next question is, how do you keep your company's data safe when it's sitting on all those unmanaged apps and devices? 1Password has an answer to this question: Extended Access Management. 1Password Extended Access Management helps you secure every sign-in for every app on every device because it solves the problems traditional IAM and MDM can't touch. And it's now available to companies with Okta and Microsoft Entra and in beta for Google Workspace customers. Check it out at onepassword.com/cyberwire. That's onepassword.com/cyberwire.